I'm back again, Latasha, certified professional life coach and counselor and self-published author from my very own Such a Time as This testimony series. My mother practices witchcraft. Now, it is a long testimony, so I'm going to condense to where I believe it counts. I don't want to make this a two-part, three-parter. Stay tuned. Again, this is my testimony. As I said in the previous video, that the woman of God I was watching said that your testimony could be help someone else, my personal testimony. And so listen up and stay tuned. I'm going to give it to you. All right. Um, I can write a book, another book about my life and how the Lord has kept me even while being in the midst of crazy folks around me. And I can say that because I was a child surrounded by adults that were living a lifestyle outside the will of the Lord and the norm. My house is where secrets were kept, secrets that no one talked about anymore. There is a root cause to this, so let me give it you that. Let me get it to you first. My grandmother was what many called back in the day as a mulatto. I know many people do not like that term now, but she and her family is listed as mulatto on census back in the 1920s and years before. My grandmother was born in 1922. My grandmother married young, and it was customary in her immediate family to marry other passing whites. These are her words. Now, my family is multicultural. They are from Louisiana. I have to mention there was one child within my grandmother's immediate family, her sibling, who married a dark skinned man, which was the younger sibling out of the six. My grandmother's marriage was tumultuous, so she ended up divorcing her husband after 35 years. She had given birth to 7 kids in that marriage. Now, here is the shift. She met a tall black man, presumed to be Nigerian. My grandmother has 2 kids with him, my grandfather. Now, there are some troubling while my grandmother was giving birth to my mother. My grandmother's oldest daughter and the midwife were present at my mother's birth. The story goes on, or the story goes, my grandmother told her daughter to get the midwife from next door. Now, this woman helped her with other deliveries per my grandmother. She gives birth, and the midwife said, "Name her after me." My grandmother said no. As she was leaving her house, the lady told her, "Because you did not name your child after me, your child will be cursed." My aunt, who was present at the birth, shared the same middle name as my mother. So there may have been some type of discussion, and the midwife put her 2 cents in about the naming. My mother did not want my grandmother did not want to name my mother Mandy, Mandy. But that stuck with my grandmother because my mother was not right intellectually. In urban colloquialism, we would say crazy. Let me give you an example. we will say, that's our crazy aunt, or that's our crazy uncle, or that's our crazy cousin, or that's my crazy sister, or that's my crazy brother. Now, this may be a part two, which I said I'm not going to do that. But there's more I can discuss about this particular history, but it's a lot, so I'm not going to go through all that. So my mother got into some things and made decisions. My father was present, and he also made decisions that led to my grandmother raising me. Again, it's a lot. But there came a period in my life I did not see my mother and father at different times. However, my father was more in touch until, and that's another story in itself. My mother's absence had nothing to do with her sanity. It wasn't dealing with her intellect. I didn't put this part in what I'm reading here because I've had to put this down in paper form to make sure I'm not really missing much. But before this occurred, my mom was doing well, working. She was a hair model for a good number of years until she got involved with a particular person. And that's what leads to this point here. All right. After her mother died in 1998, I saw my mother again at the funeral. I saw her here and there from 1999 to 2000. And in 2005, a relationship was being formulated, and an incident arose concerning my parents. My mother said something to me that was horrendous. She said, "I wish I had flushed you down the toilet." She said that repeatedly while laughing over the phone. I heard the Lord say, "Leave her alone." Ironic, she said that because my grandmother told me that a doctor told her that she should have aborted me because my mind wasn't right, according to the doctor. My grandmother responded, you give away cats and dogs, not children." She laid down and had her. She's going to keep her. Fast forward back to 2005. My mom was upset because my father and I had a better relationship. This conversation was about an incident that happened to me when I was 16 with another individual. Mind you, I was 29 and married at the time of this conversation, 2005. But they're discussing something that happened in 2089, I believe. And I called my mom on this. I called on it about the situation. So time went on, and I'm still giving my mom a chance despite what the Lord had said. Two occasions prior to this, around 2003 and 2004, my kids and I visited her out of state, and we stayed a week. We always stay a week at home. Anytime I go to visit her, in these two years, 2003, 2004, we stayed for 1 week. So in 2003, my second oldest child took sick after eating some food she cooked, and she was only sick for a couple of days. The second vacation, my mom made some gumbo, and we ate. I knew something was not right. I grabbed a spoon to stir the pot, and I hit something at the bottom. I spooned it out, and it was a whole bag of sage. Likewise, I confronted her about it. Like, why would you put a bag of sage in gumbo? She was like, that's how mama cooked gumbo. And I told her, no, that's a lie. She never made gumbo like that. So I made a decision never to eat from her again. Because this time my daughter was sick for a whole week. The whole vacation she was sick. And we had to take measures, get medicine to stop the vomiting. So after that incident in 2004, we didn't visit for a while. And when we did visit, we I always, bought food and we stayed at a hotel. So in 2005, we visit. Now I've had my fourth child. And she tried to feed her some food. No, that's not 2005, I'm sorry. She was I think probably around 2010. I think she was 5 years old. She tried to feed her something. We had already eaten McDonald's. And as I was coming out of her room, she looked at me. My daughter was saying no, not because I told her to say no, but we had already eaten. But she was like, I've already eaten. She's just sitting there, standing there. And she looks at me, my mother looks at me and says, oh, your mama don't want you eating for me. I said, she already ate. And at this point, she started talking crazy and flipping out. And I said, well, I don't have to take this. And we went to a hotel. All right, so much happened between time and over time. She started mimicking me. As years went by, it seemed like she started to mimic me, not to mock, but to try to be like me. Whatever if I have a word of encouragement, I'm talking about the Bible, talking about church, it seems like, and she never talked about the Lord beforehand, but gradually over time, building a relationship, it seems that she became more spiritual in her own head, talking about God instead of, she asking me for advice or asking me for prayer. It's now it's almost in the reverse, but I don't ask for prayer. I didn't ask her for advice. Whatever the Lord said to me, she's almost said what the Lord told me to me first. Any dream I had, she had a dream of it. Everything about me or my family, she made it seem like the Lord had already told her first. Even though she had never met my husband until years later. One of the things, the topic is my mother practices witchcraft. One time, she suggested that I should bury my children's father's shoestrings in the backyard to keep him from leaving the house. I responded, that's witchcraft. And she made excuses. I mentioned to her, and I said, now you're responsible to what you heard in your hearing. And then the final straw was around April 2023. It was concerning my father. It was centered around the same incident when I was 16. Didn't have anything to do with her. Didn't have anything particular to do with my father. Between me and an individual. Something really bad happened. My parents, they do live in the past. But she said something about my father to my oldest daughter, which was a lie. And during this particular time, which is April 2023, she calls my daughter just out of nowhere, just calls her. And as she was telling this lie to my daughter, she was laughing. And it made my daughter feel uncomfortable. She told my oldest daughter, your mother don't like when I talk about her daddy. And my daughter, again, felt uncomfortable. So she called me and told me about the situation, about the conversation. I then immediately became upset and I called her. And she was with my sister somewhere. She knew that something was wrong because I didn't sound like my usual self when I called her. And for the last time, for the last and fourth time, I heard the Lord say, let her go. And I said, well, I need to say to her, I blocked her and I deleted her number out of my phone. Shortly after the incident, after I hung up with her and blocked her, I went to my kitchen and all of a sudden a dark smog appears in front of me and it travels past me through my back door. And I heard the Lord say, the enemy is gone. Now, that is not the only incident as it relates to witchcraft. Um, she has an altar with family photos on it. She had the little candles with the makeshift candles with the Jesus on there, um, which I've told her not to have an altar on there many years ago. And my daughter told me that she saw that the altar's still there as well. She frequently uses salt to ward off evil and to bring the downfall of others. Likewise, she made statements that her mom practices witchcraft, which I refuted. I'm going to raise me. It is a flat out lie. She said it on the basis of that some of my family members have lived in New Orleans. So if you live in New Orleans, you automatically indulge in witchcraft. That's her excuse. Now, she'll say anything to justify her wrongdoings. But before I closed that door on our relationship, right before that, coming, within the past year of 2023, I was noticing my appearance starting to change. I started looking more like her and less like my father. It was kind of grimace. I didn't like the appearance of it because I knew she practiced witchcraft and her appearance is, you can see it in her face. It's all over. But I also noticed that my mother started to be more keen, 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 and somewhat intellectually sound with her advice. And because I'm discerning, observant, Christian, I started taking note of that. And my eldest took note of that as well. And she would say things before I could say them, say the answer. It's almost like we was in tune. And I also noticed too, she used to speak things like saying, you got your spirituality from me. That my gifts, me being a prophetess and Christian comes from her. And I know we have family members who are Christians, and I know that we can. The Bible talks about you pass on a heritage, which is salvation to your children's children, but that's not the case with me and her. It's not the case. But I used to tell her, I got that from God. When your mother and father forsake you, the Bible says, well, David says, God was there to pick me up. My parents didn't have my life, but God, as I recall, when I was 18, has been in my life. I know in the Bible says He knows in our mother's womb, He's been there. But from right and wrong, I didn't get it from my grandmother because she was an alcoholic. Things are going on. That's a whole different story. Things are going on in our own household. But it was God who actually was teaching me right and wrong. Don't do this, don't do that. And that's why I'm so observant, because since I was a kid, God would be on me and He's showing me things to recognize things, to recognize bad people, bad spirits, because the adults around me wasn't doing that. And when things try to come against it, and it's not many times, but when a person or individual trying to come against me, God always dealt with that person, physically dealt with them. But when I told her that I got my spirituality, quote unquote spirituality from God, she was put off with my response. Fast forward, I was like, I asked God, why am I looking like her? And so I used to stare in my bathroom mirror, like, why is my face looking like this? The Lord responded, she is ciphering from you. And He began to minister to me about my mother. And he took me back when I was a toddler or adolescent. I had a dream about my mother. I was a kid, I was a child. It was like I was having an out of body dream. I was dreaming that I was getting out of my body. It's like an out of body experience, but I was dreaming that I was an out of body experience. I saw my mother, myself, and my youngest, not my youngest, but my sisters, the younger sister, my mom, me, and my aunt Albertine. We all in the same bed. I'm sleeping in between them two. As I said, as the Lord brought me out, allowed me to see myself, put like that, not out of body experience, but allowed me to see myself and in the spirit, in a dream. And I was hovering over our bed. It was as if God was giving me a better view. We were all asleep. I was in the middle. My mom all of a sudden gets up. She stood up in the bed. I sat up in the bed. Then the Lord takes me to the living room window. And I saw demons in our front yard, just by the street, on the edge of the driveway, just all over. And back then I called him the boogeyman. And I told my uncle about this dream when I was in my teens, probably 15, not sure. And my uncle said, he said that was a demon. And he confirmed I was a younger, not child, but a teenager. And he said he confirmed it was demons. And I know, even now as an adult, I know there are demons. So the Lord takes me back to the bathroom where my mom was looking in the mirror and she was crying. She was staring in the mirror and she was crying. And I was behind her, suspended. And I can see that she was crying. And as I get close, as I'm watching her, her tears were enlarged like great drops of tears. And she was being tormented. I can't say it was a midwife because there was so much happening in the house because of my grandmother's common-law husband. And what I mean by that curse that's supposed to be pronounced on my mother, as I said, I cannot say it was that because there was so much going on within the household with her mother and, like I said before, her common-law husband. So much perversion was going on, drinking, just a lot of stuff was going on. Again, that's another story. And then, as I said, I was in my bathroom and the Lord brought that dream back to me. So as I'm standing in the mirror, not standing in the mirror, but He told me a vision. I mean, he reminded me of the dream. And sometime later, I started seeing my face started to come back to normal because, as I said before, when I closed that door and that smog, black smog left, that mist immediately, almost immediately left. My skin started clearing up. I started looking like myself. And and over time, today, I'm no longer seeing that image of my mother in that demonic uh, facial features, expression of evil. I will say this spiritually, I know God is not pleased with my mother. Something he kept repeatedly telling me is that she is wicked. And he had warned me again before to close that door. So this is my testimony. I have two more I want to put out. I'm not going to say this is not the end because it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of testimony. There's practically 48 years of testimonies. Please like, share, comment. And I want to say this too. I'm not new to this. I know I don't have many videos. I had started back in 2009. I had a lot of videos. I took it down, um, but I'm not new to YouTube. So like, share, and subscribe. I'll be back with another such as time as this testimony.